I've seen some weird stuff.
Okay, you gotta tell us some weird, inshallah, go ahead, yeah.
I've been choked and jumped on.
Yeah?
You know, I've seen some interesting things.
Subhanallah.
Even in the Kaaba in Mecca, you know.
Oh, really?
Sometimes making tawaf.
Yeah.
If you go there often enough, you'll see some very, very strange things. You know, the Mutawaz will come, will circle it, you know, the police will come.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's performed right there on the spot, you know.
Subhanallah.
I've heard them speaking, like, you know, weird things, you know. It's ajib, you know. So, you know, they say seeing is believing, right?
Yeah. You know that Netflix show, there was this famous, a few years ago, 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
It was a teenager, some high school student, committed suicide. You know what happened after that show was released? There was an increase in teenage suicide by 29%.
Let's say a person who, and this is the problem nowadays when people look for a quick fix, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Medications, doctor, hospital. Allah comes as the very last resort when everything has failed. I must turn to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Unlike the Sahaba who had the first resort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Recently I was in Morocco on a camp, and I was without a phone for about 40 hours.
Yeah.
It was the best time of my life.
Everybody says that, man.
I swear,
they hate giving it up.
Amazing.
They hate giving it up, and then at the end they say the best part of it was
like
that
I almost
you
didn't
took
want to
my
touch
phone.
it anymore. I was like, but I have work. You see, again, we go back into that, right? But it was the best time.
Yeah.
I felt so good. I felt my brain was just clear.
Yeah.
I would pay attention to things that I, you know.
Yeah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to the Life Haqq Podcast. Today we are joined with Ustad Gabriel Romaani and with us also Sheikh Abdurahman Murad. And we are sipping on some beautiful pour-over coffee in picturesque Vancouver, British Columbia. So alhamdulillah, the scene could not be better. And with such a scene and some beautiful brothers by my side, we hope we can share with you some insights, some nasiha that can be beneficial to your life, to your day, to your future, bi'idhnillah. So we were talking about, just before we started rolling, some of the prophetic guidance, the hadith, and we also, of course, by extension have ayat of Quran on how to get through times of fitna, how to get through different trials and tribulations. Do you think there is a trend in society right now to ignore the metaphysical and just focus on the physical, tangible, real benefits of Islam? So amongst the people who are practicing, so amongst people, not people who reject Islam, but is there a trend amongst people who practice Islam just to focus on the physical and ignore the metaphysical? So I'd like to hear from...
بارك الله فيكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Quite honestly, I think there is a trend nowadays where people begin to ignore the spiritual side of things and more focus on the physical side of things. I think that's due in part to the materialistic way that people live their lives. Even if some are religious, mashallah, praying in the masjid, doing what a Muslim should be doing, you still find that there's more of a, you can say, a conscious effort to focus on the physical side of things. That is more important. So you'll find, for example, people saying that, well, you should go to the gym, you should do things that can physically help you, which is good. But when it comes
they're
to
all from the sunnah, right?
Of course. When it comes to the spiritual health of an individual, it's as if they tie the two together and say that, well, if you're going to become physically healthy, then that will naturally tilt you towards a more healthy spiritual side. But that cannot always be the case. Sometimes you have a person who will become healthy, lose weight, put on muscle, but then that spiritual side is absolutely lacking. Right? So I think that's an important thing. We have to have that balance in life, definitely. Yeah.
We live in a time of a materialistic philosophy. So human beings are guided by materialism. I mean, just if you look at our phones, what we depend on, everything to do with something is very tangible, very measurable. It needs to make sense. One here, one there, put together equals two. And I think this influences the way we look at even our faith. And as you just mentioned before, sometimes people come to ulama or imams, may Allah help us. But again, everyone's influenced. Like, I think we need to understand that no matter who you are, as Imam Malik rahimahullah said, that we take and reject from people, right? إِلَّا صَاحِبُ هَذَا الْقَبْرِ, except for the person in this grave, which is Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, right? So human beings are human beings, whether alim or abid or whoever it is, and we're influenced by our environment. Like, there's just no one who can say I'm ma'soom, you know, I'm not influenced by my environment. It doesn't matter who you are. It's like everyone is, right? We have to admit that. So I think people are driven by a very materialistic approach in how they deal with things. And subhanAllah, when you look at previous generations, if you study the history, people were more in touch with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't want to call it supernatural, right? But right, farmers, people who understood where their food comes from, it depends, they would pray, whatever they were. If you find a trend throughout the world, they were more inclined towards spirituality, because at that time the culture would not allow them to to think, I'll just press this and that will happen. There was some tawakkul, you know, whether whoever was Muslims, non-Muslims. SubhanAllah, we have this cross, right? I mean, Allah is there for everyone, right? It's just whether people follow the truth or not. But in general, most people behave very similarly. I think this is kind of what we're dealing with right now. They're very materialistic, very... So that
I think there is a demographic that indulges in, for example, you'll have healing lodges and different things, especially here within... BC, and I saw this as well in other areas where they have certain indigenous populations. They indulge in things that are spiritual, but they don't really believe in it. It's almost like an exercise in fun. It's like you're kind of experiencing. It's like a cultural fun thing, but there's no deep-seated belief in that's going to have any real benefit. So they almost commercialize that aspect of spirituality. You know what I mean? But have you witnessed people that have been cured through Ruqyah? Like, so we can get some first-hand accounts where people can see that there is a spiritual, metaphysical benefit. So I would like to hear if you have any.
I've seen some weird stuff.
Okay, you gotta tell us some weird. Inshallah, go ahead.
I've been choked and jumped on.
You
know, I've seen some interesting things.
Even
in the Kaaba in Mecca, you know.
Oh, really?
Sometimes making tawaf.
Yeah.
If you go there often enough, you'll see some. It's very, very strange things. You know, the mutawaz will come, will circle it. You know, the police will come, and then like it's performed right there on the spot. You know.
Subhanallah.
I've heard them speaking like, you know, weird things. You know. It's ajib, you know. So, you know, they say seeing is believing, right?
Yeah.
But there's an element, as you said, of faith that has to be involved. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. Yani this is not something that I need to prove. No, you are believing in something it's hard to prove. I mean, okay, if I saw it and I say it on camera, people are like, wow, but they didn't see it, so they're probably not gonna like, this is.
You'll still have skeptics, right?
Skeptical, right? But it requires iman, and it's built upon, of course, other evidence, right? I mean, this is one part. SubhanAllah, recently I remember there was a big fitna in India, southern India, in Kerala, you know, between the community. And there was a group who was denying the concept of such things. And there was those who were saying, no, it is possible. It was a big fitna. Ulama got involved. I'm not sure if it reached to you, but subhanAllah, it was a very big fitna where people were just denying that these things can ever happen and so on. And like faith is a must in him. And I remember the hadith of some of the companions. I cannot remember exactly the name is mentioned, but where they were visiting a certain tribe and they wouldn't welcome them, and the tribal chief got stung by a scorpion, right? And one of the sahabis, he performed Ruqyah. And he was reading the Surah Al-Fatiha. But look, his iman was so strong. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. And the man was cured. And he charged them sheep, you know, he had to pay some sheep. And they took it back to the Prophet ﷺ. And this is where the fuqaha say that you can charge for Ruqyah, you know? It's the dalil for it. But the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, he laughed. He said, give me some as well, you know, so some of the sheep. The guy was not Muslim. He was not Muslim. The Sahaba who made obviously, he believes his iman was so strong that it would affect a person who doesn't believe it. So I think that element of faith in it is very important. In not just Ruqyah but in the existence, the ghaib. I think this is huge. And again, with even in our dawah, Shaykh, subhanAllah, it's like science and this must equal that, and we have evidence. Look at this book. I'm proving to you, right? It's just sometimes very philosophical and arguments. Okay, there are things, no doubt. There's ayat, no doubt. But sometimes I think we're stretching things, you know, because we want to cater to a society that is very much onto the scientific method. And look at this, and we discovered now, and you know, subhanAllah, next 10 years from now, the study changes, and people are like, I don't know, you know, they get all flip-floppy. I think we need to establish our iman and the ghaib, you know.
100%. Even for something you would be amazed to see something as what we would think is unrelated, like snoring. So I had a patient I was treating for snoring, okay? And I did some therapy on him. It improved his condition a little bit, but then it returned. And it returned too fast, because the therapy that I do, it should last at least like a year and a half, 2 years. Then I met him in the grocery store, and I said, what happened? You know, like with your treatment, did the snoring continue to improve? Was it resolved? He said, no, it came back right away. He said, then I actually decided to do Ruqyah. And he said, the Sheikh, he did Ruqyah on me. He said, my snoring completely cured. You know what I mean? And so something like that, you would think it has nothing to do with you needing Ruqyah or whatever, but that completely, because it was so bad that he could not sleep in the same level in his house as his wife and kids, because it would keep them up. So he had to sleep in the basement, you know what I mean? So he would not be able to return if, you know, it was not resolved. But subhanAllah, something like that. Have you witnessed anything, Sheikh, with?
Well, there's a few things, definitely. You know, I've been involved in Ruqyah therapy sessions and whatnot, but I think aside from the individual cases that I've seen myself that, you know, are awe-inspiring sometimes, subhanAllah, I think the thing is that we have to understand that with the Quran, some just look at it as a novel that you recite every so often, or at least in the month of Ramadan, try to get the whole Quran in there. That's good enough. But that's not the function of the Quran. The Quran is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So it is, of the ayat, are those that are shifa. Of the Quran is that which is shifa directly for an individual. Shifa from everything. A cure from every ailment and disease that you might be suffering from, subhanAllah. Keep in mind though, some do come, and this is the thing that I find very odd. They'll have little to no belief in the Quran. They have no practice. That's why usually when I engage in a session where I talk to someone, I ask them, how is your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Number one, directly, to see, you know, that you talked about the element of having that yaqeen, al-iman bil-ghaib, completely understand that. But when these people that do come, you have to quiz them to see where they're at in their faith. Some might tell you that I tried everything else, nothing worked, and, you know, I don't pray, I don't do nothing. I want to try this out.
Last resort.
Basically, I tried everything else. Let me just try this out too. So with that attitude of let me try it out, I have little to, you know, faith that it'll have an impact, because here.
And sometimes the attitude is, I'm going to give you a chance.
That's what
you know,
exactly
like the kind of,
convince me.
yeah, I'm going to give you, I tried everyone else, I'm going to give you a chance, you know, subhanAllah.
And that's a sad thing. You have people with that attitude that come forth, and then now they're saying, Oh, it didn't work. Like, what did you do? So that's why you're going to put them through that, you want to make a tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal. You want to become more engaged in your faith. You want to come closer to Allah. So these are all, see, the problem is, in this materialistic society, the notion is a reciprocal relationship. I did this, what do I get in return? It's like the medications that we take. You take, if you have, a headache or you have temperature, take a Tylenol, take an Advil.
Very transactional.
Yeah, so you feel better. Now, you're thinking, okay, the Quran will do the exact, in the moment, right now, I read Al-Fatiha, I'll be cured. But they do and they don't find no result. That's how this doesn't work. Forget it.
But Sheikh, that's not even how medication works. They never have a magic pill. Like you take one pill, it's done. It's like you got to take the dosage for a period of time and you got to keep taking it. Yeah, you don't just stop.
Yeah, so I think the point over here is that when you want to use this, we have to have that firm belief, that yaqeen, that, that firm, 100% yaqeen and belief, that certainty that this is a cure from Allah Azza wa Jal. In addition to that, we have to learn to kind of better our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overall. Be it the one who's reciting the Quran upon the individual. Because keep in mind, the hadith that you mentioned, who was reciting the Quran upon that person? It was a Sahabi who had that yaqeen, that iman. Today, the one who's reciting the Quran might himself have flaws in his own practice, right? So you're not anywhere near that Sahabi who recited. So generally speaking, what I learned from the mashayikh that I learned from, the Ruqyah gains strength and power by the one reciting it having a stronger yaqeen, a stronger iman, right? That's a very important element. The weaker that person's resolve, the weaker that person's yaqeen, the weaker the end result will be, subhanAllah. Allah understand.
What about, Sheikh, the hadith of the 70,000 who would enter without hisab and then they don't do ruqyah, they don't have it done on them? How do we consolidate that, Sheikh?
Well, look.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but see.
I swear to God. Subhanallah.
Well, here, you can look at that, the interpretation of the hadith. There's, people who, they have that firm tawakkul and yaqeen upon Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? That's the thing. At the same time, we are, as Muslims, informed to take by al-asbab, to take by the necessary, reasons and causes to bring us whatever we need. So if you're suffering, that's why you find the Sahaba, like overall.
Could it be along the same line, Sheikh? Sorry to cut you off. About, the difference between rida and sabr. That, that state, the scholars have said, is higher because they're pleased. Sabr is like, you're pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you want that removed, what you're enduring. Whereas rida is like, you're pleased with the decree and you have no concern of it being removed, Is that something that could be consolidated?
In a way. But for me, it's more a person who, and this is the problem nowadays when people look for a quick fix. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Medications, doctor, hospital. Allah comes as the very last resort when everything has failed. I must turn to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Unlike the Sahaba who had the first resort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The very first thing that they did was turn to Him for anything that they needed. This is misdaq qawlillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in.
And isn't it true that we have a hadith of the Messenger ﷺ where he specifically advised certain Sahaba, do not take help from anyone?
In a way, yes.
So in that situation, your first and last is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who you ask for help.
So let's say someone starts off with the right foot, asked Allah Azza wa Jalla, tried his best, and then now there's no other option. You take by al-asbab. You go and basically seek that help, alhamdulillah, that is available to you. But, always have that approach that as a Muslim, we turn to Allah Azza wa Jalla first. That's something very important, yeah. And I don't want the notion to be that we don't seek medical help. No, we seek medical help when needed, definitely. Yeah. So, when some of the mashayikh were asked about the same question, what does this actually entail? We can look at it from a different perspective because the ulama have spoken about this hadith from different perspectives. So some of the interpretations could refer to, people who don't rely upon Allah Azza wa Jalla and go directly to the medical field and basically look at that as the only cure. That could be one thing. It could be, for example, specific types of cures that are, resorted to. Someone might resort to, medical branding as they would do in the past, right? Yeah. So that was one thing that they used to do in the past. Take an iron rod, burn it, and then insert it in the place of pain and destroy whatever tissue that was. Allah understand.
But even with medical treatments, if you look at the the yaqeen people have in medical treatments, generally, because I know the medical field very well, you will have people, you'll give them a prescription, they will not question the studies, the dalil of why that medication is effective for them. Nobody questions it. But why do people question if you tell them Islam is telling you to do this, the prescription of the Messenger ﷺ says this, and you're like, okay, what's the dalil? But in this time, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
But you'll never question anything that somebody in a white lab coat gives you.
I think again the culture is that we feel that science is above everything.
Yeah.
It's become actually a religion to us. It's a deen, it's a way of life. Everything is to do with, no, give me the proof. You might not even understand the proof, have no clue about the study or the procedures around there, but give me the proof, right? As long as an authority gives it to you, which is a white coat, and we've fallen into huge problems with that in the past because there is a monopoly on that. We have to understand, putting aside any conspiracy theories, there is a monopoly on that. I can remember when the documentary of Expelled, Intelligence Not Allowed, came out in the 90s, and the whole creationism was blooming, right? So a lot of the scientists were turning to creationism due to their studies. I mean, they were excommunicated from the academic community. They were boycotted. They lost their funding because you had to be a Darwinist. Like that's not monopoly. If you're not a Darwinist, and these were like, you're talking about PhD upon PhD doing their studies in the universe and whatnot. And they're saying that, look, because of our studies, we're concluding that there has to be a creator. What? No, you're done. You're out. So there's a monopoly. People, they control that as to who is the authority that dictates, right, what is right and what is wrong. And people, because through conditioning, movies, commercials, a lot of things, oh yeah, he's a doctor. Like if someone comes in and says he's a doctor, it's almost like that's it. He's an authority on the issue. Except if you're an imam or sheikh, you're not an authority. An engineer will know better than you,
No, but interesting is to add to what you said, Sheikhna, is, there was a study a while back that people would refer to often, I guess in the 80s and 90s, of the benefit of drinking some wine.
Right. One glass of wine.
Antioxidants, right?
Yeah, so they're talking about this, and they would always bring the study in the face of Muslims. Oh, you guys say it's unlawful because it's impure, dangerous. Look at this study. Of course, like you said, people never looked into this study to see who was tested, what sample group. They don't care about that. Like you said, a white coat said, you know what, this is good. Here you go. Now, what shocked me, I'm driving towards the masjid. This is in Fort Mac a couple of years back. Driving the masjid, and suddenly they had like a news segment. After the news segment, they're talking about science and whatnot. And this segment came up where they said, recent news or recently we have been informed that study is completely void of any type of authenticity because of the fact that they were very biased in what they saw to be beneficial to people. So they tested people in France, and they said, well, in France they drink a lot of, versus like France versus the States. Why are people more healthier in France versus those in the States? So I don't know, for some reason, well, of course there's a reason for this, but they said it's because of the wine. That's why they were healthier. But they eat more fruits. They eat more vegetables. They eat more fresh fruits.
Less processed, less McDonald's. And
so how come none of that factored into the equation? It's just a matter of wine, because it's a commercial aspect to this that really, I guess, pushed them in that direction. Allah understand. It was uncovered, and the lady said, I don't know what to believe anymore. That's the thing that kind of struck me. I don't know what to believe anymore. We hear all these studies being debunked. What do I believe?
SubhanAllah. With that study in particular, I remember doing a rotation with some family doctors, and we were actually discussing this, and they said no one will ever tell you that drinking wine is good for you. Actually, what they, I don't know if it was the same study or what they tried to have follow-up studies do was say, if you drink alcohol, then the healthiest poison is wine. You know what I mean? That's how they tried to spin it. But no one will ever tell you, because that has a direct poison effect on your liver, a direct poison effect in your brain. It's one of the things that can go past the blood-brain barrier, right? So it doesn't. But SubhanAllah, how many people's iman gets rocked. Whether people mention this study or they'll mention evolution, people get rocked. Why do we allow ourselves to have is it our iman is so weak, or is their campaign of propaganda so strong? What's happening here?
I think it's both. I think it's both, no doubt. Our iman is weak.
Yeah.
Their campaigns are very strong, especially with media now. SubhanAllah, a segment as short as 30 seconds can have a huge impact on a person's brain. 30 seconds, Recently it was that Barbie movie, an hour and, I said, an hour and 20 minutes of this Barbie movie will have a lifelong effect on your child's brain, especially your daughters.
And sometimes irreparable.
It's irreversible.
You know that Netflix, because you brought that up, that Netflix show, there's this famous, a few years ago, 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
It was a teenager, some high school student, committed suicide. You know what happened after that show was released? There was an increase in teenage suicide by 29%.
Yeah.
And in that study, they took account for every single other factor to make sure.
Around that time, that game Blue Whale came out as well, if you remember.
Okay, no, I don't know.
They were basically, the last stage of that game was some game, I think it was out of country, but I'm not going to name it now. But yeah, basically the last stage is for you to commit suicide. It starts with you listening to certain music, and then you move to the next stage. Stages, a game.
Okay.
Last game is you have to be on a ledge and you jump, and quite a few people are doing that.
Was it the Squid Game?
No, it's called Blue Whale.
Blue Whale.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was quite in the Khalij. It was big.
Wow. But you're absolutely correct. People is it in society in general. That means then it's more than Muslims. Are we becoming weak-minded in general? We're so susceptible to suggestion. What do you think, Sheikh?
I think it's a matter of course, I think multiple factors, but then definitely the matter of there being weak iman, and generally speaking, people are distant from their faith as well. I mean, that's one very important factor over here. If you compare our time to that of the past, and talk not in the 90s, but beyond that, the 80s, the 70s, the earlier generations, the problems that we're now facing today were never present in the past. In the past, maybe there was less in terms of the ilm being available online, but you had those who were in the deen dedicated very much so, subhanAllah. Yeah. So there are
so many distractions.
Yeah, so there's less, and there's no internet back then either. There was internet, it was very poor, and unlike what we have today, which is so advanced and it's mind-boggling, subhanAllah. So there's a lot of things that, I guess contribute to that, subhanAllah.
Given all this, it's actually a really good topic because I want to get into something super contemporary. Apple is about to release that, what are those special glasses? You know what I'm talking about?
Virtual
What is
reality.
it? What is that called? That it's like a virtual
reality.
Yeah, it's like a virtual reality, like a glasses or something, right? So Sheikh, this thing is so advanced, like they're saying, for example, you're sitting at home, it's as if you have like a massive, huge TV screen. And you can have interactive computers, so you're doing like that, you're moving your fingers, moving things around, you're watching TV, you could be doing so many other things while you're doing that, it does augmented reality. So you can actually look at the world, but then you could see like data points and stuff like that, so it augments the reality, you know what I mean? And that's another, I think, evolution right now with the whole virtual reality and technology and all that with us. If this little square is so powerful in controlling us, what is that going to do? And do scholars need to be more aggressive in terms of their fatwa and restrictions and say how we used to ban chess back in the day? You know what I'm saying? This is something that's haram to do. Do we need to take those measures, you think? Because sometimes I think we want to be balanced and fair and show, hey, this is, we're not being extreme, but it is having an extreme effect. It is having an extreme. Now, if you're going to be further plugged in, and who is controlling this virtual reality? You understand what I'm saying, Sheikh? So what do you think about these emerging technologies and how Muslims, and specifically perhaps the ulama, need to respond to this? Are they moving too slow to respond to this?
A lot of the new technologies, I think there's always a kind of a gap. I mean, we don't address anything until it becomes an issue. That's the reality. I mean, be it in terms of the internet even, and sometimes we do have a knee-jerk reaction overall. And this I don't think it's healthy. With a knee-jerk reaction, what I mean by that is that almost generally speaking, almost all the times you'll come across that it's haram because it's one little aspect. It's like, for example, some of the cryptocurrencies that were out there. Immediately, the knee-jerk, it's haram. Why? Because there's unknown variables within this. Then khalas, haram. But now you have like a more nuanced response now, right? So the initial knee-jerk reaction is what may not be as healthy as we might perceive. It kind of brings people more, it garners more interest. Especially nowadays, we're in a generation where no longer can you just tell someone, don't do this. Many you say, don't do this, you further perk their interest to come along and get more involved in it, whatever it is, right? So we talk more technology. You know, in the past, I recall my generation, those before me, if you're told don't, سمعنا وأطعنا. And if you're told, what can I do? Like, do something, you're told, don't do this, you would ask, what can I do? Or what should I do? Or how can I do something? Nowadays, it's a completely different ballgame because if you tell someone no, they're going to ask you why and they're going to challenge you. Why is it? If you don't have a reasonable enough response, and this is part of the technology.
I think that you make a valid point that if you say it's no, but I do think that we need to start making perhaps some more stronger stances.
We have to.
Because you know why? For example, by the time, like once you open the door, now you're going to say, okay, but control yourself. But if it has such a high addiction rate, it makes people highly addictive, then it's going to be very difficult once they're down that rabbit hole to reach them. You know what I mean? What do you think? Am I approaching this too strongly? I just feel I see a big difference because I see a lot of kids in my practice and I see the behavioral issues that are coming out with technology and the developmental issues. It is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. And then you're going to lose it. If their brain develops in that way over a period of years and you try to reason with them in their 20s and 30s, it's not going to happen. It's going to be highly difficult to do that.
Yeah, I think obviously it's difficult because by default in muamalat and dealings, everything is halal by default.
Mubah, 100%, right? Yeah.
So the ulama are not going to jump in and say right away. It's, of course, with technology and the world again is pushing, this is a step forward, it can help this, it can help that. So obviously there could be benefit.
Yeah.
It's more to, I guess, as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah says, we need to look at Sharia as like which one's more beneficial of two and which one's more harmful of the two, right? It's not just halal and haram, like we need to weigh things out. It's a tough one because it's sold as something that's going to improve humanity, improve this, improve communication, reaching out and so on and so forth. But maybe what needs to be done is to be looked at the phones and how the phones have influenced society, and maybe look at this and say,
like a case study to see now if you have something like this, which is already highly addictive and has people in their grips. Imagine now this screen is all you see. That what becomes your reality. Then how addictive, how controlling will that be? All right, all right. I scared you with this fatwa request.
No.
What time is Maghrib? Oh, I need to know something.
Yeah, you're
Allah
okay, so. Okay.
But the guys have to still pack up, no?
Yeah, they're gonna pack up, but
the
half the team's gonna be here. Like just me and Adi have to go. So.
Okay.
I'm gonna. If one of you guys can just double check with Shahir when Ustad Gabriel has to leave. Yeah.
Close.
Yeah. So let's stay on that. So with that same vein, like
maybe they can make qiyas from what they see from the phone.
Yeah.
And apply it to.
But because remember we were talking about robots.
Robots as well, right? I just saw a video of. A boxing robot, like people are sparring now with robots.
I think that's fake though.
Is
That's
it?
That's a CGI thing. That's a CGI.
But I mean, it's not far from that. You got Sophie, who's got a citizenship, don't it?
Yeah. So you have that,
This is coming anyway.
Yeah.
Looking ahead is, it just reminds me of those old movies back in the days, RoboCop, cyborgs, iRobot or whatever.
Yeah.
Is humanity going to be replaced by robots?
Skynet.
It's artificial intelligence going to at some point evolve to such an extent that they'll start wanting to take over humanity. They'll look at humanity and assess their condition and say useless pests that are pulling back the world, or what?
Because you know what, you know what I feel. Then you're competing. Reality will be competing with virtual reality, right?
No doubt.
And if it's gonna be a dopamine high versus having to work for that dopamine high, that instant dopamine hit is always going to win, you know, especially for children, especially if you don't learn. See, your formative years, one of the most important differentiating factors between a child and an adult is self-control, self-restraint. You know what I mean? Like a baby has no self-restraint, cries, you know, for whatever it wants. As you get older, you develop that self-restraint. How are you going to develop self-restraint if, you know, anytime you feel the world is too hard, you go into the virtual world?
Yeah.
And you look better. You don't have to get muscles in the virtual world. You don't have to work out.
Right.
You can just look like you have nice muscles. You don't have to work hard for it. Right. You can look handsome. You can have 10 girlfriends in the virtual world. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because, and we talked about this before, a lot of times we can see the game happen before it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that to me is the biggest danger, is that when your kids get addicted and now you say, okay, don't do that. Now you're talking about detox, you're talking about rehab instead of that prevention.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to counter this because the wave is in that direction.
Yeah.
So I think the Ummah has to wake up and, I don't know, put a stop. But if there's no unity, I don't think we can stop this wave, honestly. I think it's going to go back to what people say today. Well, you know, the phone is halal, but what you do with it is haram.
Yeah.
So it goes back to self.
I honestly, you know, what I wish somebody would invent, this has been my secret wish, is that somebody would invent, like, you know, one of those brick phones, like a Nokia brick phone or something,
right,
that pairs with this, where sometimes you can just put this away and you can just have that phone that somebody can just call you if it's like an emergency thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wish somebody would invent something like that. So then, because, you know, sometimes for emergencies, somebody to reach you, if you could just have like a version of this, which is just text and not fancy text, no emojis, just like a regular text for emergencies and a phone that pairs with like a brick phone, you know, I think that would be really good because it's so distracting because, you know, you something pops up, okay, like a work thing.
It's addictive.
You're dealing with work stuff all the time. But then guess what, at the same time, like, you know, they're alerting you, hey, you got a reaction on her IG or whatever, and then you go down and then you look up and it's 20 minutes is gone.
No,
you know what I mean?
It's horrible. I think Allah is going to go back to self-restraint. Each individual is going to have to just kind of do it themselves, unless we come up with one of these inventions.
Yeah.
One of my friends came with a concept called phone fasting.
Yeah.
You know, he tries to fast every day, at least a good, 8 to 10 hours away from the phone.
Yeah.
So
in Camp Sunnah, we take everybody's phone.
That's amazing.
We take them and lock them.
Recently, I was in Morocco on a camp, and I was without a phone for about 40 hours.
Yeah.
It was the best time of my life.
Everybody says that, man.
I swear,
they hate giving it up.
Amazing.
They hate giving it up, and then at the end, they say the best part of it was
like I almost didn't want to touch it anymore. I was like, but I have work. You see, again, we go back into that, right? But it was the best time.
Yeah.
I felt so good. I felt my brain was just clear.
Yeah.
I would pay attention to things that
you become like trained. It becomes like you become a slave to the alerts. Like, I have to, okay, what is this? I have to. And it becomes an addiction. It becomes really hard to try to get self-control and to snap out of that. Do you think, what do you think could be a big counter, is this a realistic counter movement? And that is to make a push for Muslims to start rural communities.
100%. There are already some movements in Malaysia.
Yeah.
I've seen them, rural communities. Phones are not allowed, only on certain days. They have certain restrictions. They have basically like a little tribe, a little village. And I've seen it in Malaysia.
Yeah.
I think it's important to counter this technological revolution. What is it now? 2 point, whatever, I don't even know what it is anymore, 2.0, 3.0, whatever it is, with connecting back to nature, like getting out, leaving technology, going horse riding, leaving the car.
And in general, there's a trend in society like to go off grid.
Off the grid, that's it.
There's certain groups that I keep an eye on, like just to learn from, like how to grow your own food, how to like.
The funny thing is that even those people are filming themselves.
No, right? These people aren't.
Oh, they're not.
Yeah. They're just, some of them, like they'll help each other. Like none of these, like some of these groups are really sincere. Like they're not trying to be influencers. They'll like take pictures, or they'll show you, hey, this is how I made a self-sustaining like hydroelectric thing by a stream. By on my land, or how I do solar, or how I do like all sorts of self-sustaining heating stuff. So there is a movement for people just to go off the grid and be self-sustaining, not be dependent, on government resources, all of this stuff.
I've seen it. I think we as masajid and community should influence our youth and our families to do that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, not everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
But at least programs, camps. Youth programs to at least connect people with nature. So when you feel again that it's getting too much, you can unplug, just go and reset, and have that refreshing experience, and maybe go back to the dunya after.
Reset, recharge. Shahir, what's up, bro? Sorry, you were trying to get my time.
We gotta wrap up inshallah to catch the programs.
Okay, so right now?
Yeah.
Okay, khair inshallah. So we'll just wrap up, give our address. Do you know the tagline?
What is it?
We live by the haqq.
We live by the haqq. We die by
the haqq. Just when you think life is stuck, tune into Life Haqq.
I'm bad with these things. Okay.
Live by the haqq, die by the haqq. Just when you think life is stuck, tune into Life Haqq.
All right.
You think you can do that? All right, let's do it.
All right, brothers and sisters, Jazakallah khair for tuning in. We live by the haqq, we die by the haqq. Just when you feel that life is stuck, tune in to Life Haqq.
Allahu Akbar. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How can they tune into Life Haqq? Subscribe, man. Subscribe, follow, subscribe. What else?
Let's make it. Let's
follow.
make it viral, man. What's going on? Annoying. What's happening? Drama, clickbait. Let's make it. Viral,
let's do it. Let's do it.
What happened to quality content?
Let's do it.
People don't like
this
it.
was nice, man, with the Sheikh giving us like ilm here and us engaging with contemporary issues with our deen
stuff,
that's what I'm talking about. Like, no one's gonna ask, like, we're not talking about fight, but the fact that you thought about that same hadith right away. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's like, we're thinking about this on a different way. Like, you want to link it to akhirah, which is the most important goal and destination. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan. So, akhi, I think we don't want you to be late.